Look at those boots. Did you borrow them from your granddad, Reed? The barracks roared with laughter. A drill sergeant's whistle cut through the air, and for a moment silence fell. Then Sergeant Collins stepped forward, his voice sharp as broken glass. Private Marcus Reed, step out. I felt every eye in that room burn into me as I stumbled to my feet. Farm boy thinks he's army material. Let's give him a round of applause before he washes out. The laughter came back, meaner this time. My hands clenched behind my back. I stared straight ahead, but inside it felt like someone had poured fire into my chest. That was my first night in uniform, and already I was the platoon joke. They didn't know much about me, just that my accent sounded backwoods, my gear looked older, and my shoulders didn't carry the swagger they expected. In their eyes, I was weak. Easy target. I had no allies in that barracks, not yet. Just rows of faces eager to find someone beneath them, and I gave them exactly what they wanted. Eyes forward, Reed, Collins barked, circling me like a wolf sniffing blood. Tell me, do you even know how to march, or should I send you back to the chicken coop? The platoon chuckled, and I felt my ears burn. But I held my ground. That's all I could do. Hold. That night, when lights went out, the humiliation didn't leave. Laughter still echoed in my head. I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, fighting the urge to let the tears come. Across the room, Corporal Johnson, one of the older recruits, glanced at me once before rolling over. He didn't say a word, but something in his look wasn't mockery. It was recognition, like he'd seen this game before, but wasn't ready to step in. Not yet. Morning brought no relief. Platoon, form up. The sun wasn't up, but Sergeant Collins was already in our faces. Inspection time. Boots lined the floor in perfect rows, except mine. My left boot, the one I'd polished until midnight, still looked dull. Collins snatched it up, waved it in front of the formation. This is trash. You shine this with bacon grease, Reed? More laughter. He tossed it down and the boot hit me in the chest. I caught it, swallowing the anger that burned in my throat. I thought about my father's old dog tags tucked under my shirt, the weight of them pressing against my skin. They reminded me of why I was here. But Collins didn't know that. Nobody did. Chow Hall was worse. I carried my tray, scanning for a seat. Every table seemed full until I got close. Then suddenly there was no space. I ended up at the far corner, eating alone, pretending not to hear the whispers. Won't last 2 weeks. Probably never fired a rifle. Bet he can't even run a mile. They weren't just words, they were weapons. Every bite of eggs tasted like grit in my mouth. But across the room, I caught Johnson watching again. Not laughing, just watching. The days blurred together. Push-ups in the rain, cadence shouted until my throat cracked. Collins finding new ways to put me on display. Reed, you call that running? My grandma could beat you in a 3-mile. The platoon roared again. And me? I kept moving. Step after step, breath after breath. Slow, stubborn, never quitting. But inside I wondered how much longer I could carry it. How much longer before the weight of their voices crushed me completely. Some nights I thought about home, about the fields I left behind. Easier life, maybe. But then I'd remember my father's medal, the way he stood at attention in that old photograph. He didn't raise me to quit. He raised me to endure. Still, endurance came with a price. The loneliness was heavy. I had no battle buddy, no one to share the load. Just the silence of the barracks after lights out, and the sound of muffled laughter that always seemed to find me. And yet in those quiet hours, I made a promise to myself. I would take every insult, every laugh, every doubt, and turn it into fuel. I didn't know how or when, but one day they would see. The first hint came sooner than I expected. During an obstacle drill, I slipped and hit the ground hard. Collins smirked, ready to tear me apart. But before he could speak, Johnson's voice cut in. Calm, steady. He's still moving, Sergeant. For a second, the whole formation froze. Collins snarled but didn't answer. I pulled myself up, knees shaking, and finished the course. Not first, not even close. But I finished. And this time the laughter wasn't as loud. That night Johnson passed me in the hallway, said nothing, just left a protein bar on my bunk. No one else noticed, but I did. It was small, silent, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't entirely alone. Still, Collins wasn't done with me, not even close. "Reed," he hissed the next morning, "I'll break you before the month's out." I didn't answer, just kept my eyes forward. Inside, though, I felt something shift. The humiliation was still there. The doubt still gnawed at me. But beneath it all, something harder was forming, something that wouldn't bend. And I thought to myself, he has no idea who I am, no idea what I carry, no idea what I'm capable of. What I never expected was how quickly that truth would come out. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. Rain came down like punishment. Cold, sharp, endless. We were crawling through the mud at 0500, packs heavy, rifles slippery in our hands. Sergeant Collins' voice cut through the storm, louder than the thunder. "Reed, you move slower than a dying mule. Pick it up." Every recruit heard it. Every laugh stung like salt in a wound. My arms trembled, my chest burned, but I kept going. One crawl, one push, one breath. That's all I had. But quitting? That wasn't an option. Not then, not ever. By the time we staggered back to the barracks, soaked and shivering, Collins was still at it. "Some of you will make soldiers. Some of you," he looked straight at me, "are just filling space until they break." The room chuckled. I stayed quiet, changed into dry fatigues. Stared at the floor like it could swallow me whole. And maybe that was the point. To bury me before I even had a chance to stand. Chow Hall was no better. The air thick with grease and noise, trays clattering, voices bouncing off the walls. I sat with my back against the far wall, chewing eggs that tasted like rubber. A recruit leaned over from another table, smirking. "Hey, Reed, your cows miss you yet?" The whole group howled. I wanted to slam my tray into his face, but I didn't. I kept eating, kept swallowing it all down. That's what discipline felt like sometimes, eating rage and pretending it was food. But there was one moment, so small I almost missed it. Corporal Johnson slid by my table, dropped an extra biscuit on my tray, and kept walking. No eye contact, no words, just a quick gesture. So quiet nobody else noticed. But I noticed. For the first time since arriving, I felt the faintest spark of something. Maybe not hope, but possibility. Someone saw me. Someone didn't laugh. The days blurred into drills, inspections, and Collins's endless mockery. "Reed, your salute looks like you're swatting flies." "Reed, my grandma runs faster than you, and she's in a wheelchair." The platoon laughed every time. That laughter was worse than the rain, worse than the mud. It dug under my skin, made me doubt myself. But I also knew every insult was fuel. I'd burn it when the time came. One afternoon, we hit the rifle range. Targets lined up at 200 meters. Everyone wanted to impress. Rifles cracked, brass casings hit the dirt, and Collins paced behind us, eyes sharp. When it was my turn, I steadied my breathing, aimed, and fired. Click. Nothing. My rifle jammed. Collins grinned like Christmas had come early. Of course, Reed can't even make the weapon work. Maybe he should be in the kitchen peeling potatoes. The platoon roared again. I ignored them. Took the rifle apart, fingers steady despite my pounding chest. Cleared the jam, slid the bolt forward, fired, hit dead center. I didn't smile, didn't look around, just reloaded and hit the next target. And the next. Collins's smirk faded. He barked at the others, but I saw it. For a split second, he realized I wasn't as useless as he wanted me to be. That night, back in the barracks, I scrubbed floors after lights out. My knees ached, my back screamed, but I wanted the place spotless before inspection. Halfway through, I heard boots behind me. Johnson again. He crouched down, held out an energy bar. "Eat," he muttered. That was it. Just one word. But in that silence, I understood. He'd seen enough to know I wasn't weak. He just wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. Weeks passed, rain drills, obstacle courses, night watches that froze my bones. Collins never let up. If I stumbled, he was there. If I slowed, he made sure the whole platoon noticed. "This man is dead weight," he barked once during a forced march, forcing everyone to carry extra load because of me. The hatred in their eyes cut deep. But Johnson, walking behind me, shifted part of my pack onto his without a word. I wanted to thank him, but silence was our only shield. Then came the field exercise that nearly broke me. 12 miles through swamp terrain, live fire overhead, instructors timing every move. My boots sank in muck with each step. Collins hovered like a hawk, waiting for me to collapse. "Fall behind, Reed, and you're out," he shouted. My legs shook. My vision blurred. I wanted to stop so badly. And then I heard laughter. One of the recruits behind me muttering, "Bet he drops in the next 100 yards. Something inside me snapped. I pushed harder. Every muscle screamed. Every breath tore at my lungs. But I refused to give them the satisfaction. Step after step, I pushed until I crossed the line. Last again. Barely standing. But I crossed. Collins stormed over, face red. "Don't think finishing last makes you a hero. You're still nothing." His words hit like fists. But behind him, I caught Johnson's eyes. He gave the faintest nod. That nod was worth more than a medal. Later that night, lying in my bunk, I thought about everything. Every insult, every laugh, every step in the mud. They were trying to break me. Maybe Collins even believed it was his job. But what he didn't understand was this. I was already broken long before I came here. Life had done that. What I was doing now wasn't about breaking. It was about proving I could still stand. And just when I thought I'd figured out how to endure, the moment came that changed everything. A storm drill at midnight. Lightning cracked the sky, rain pouring sideways, mud sucking at our boots. We were ordered to move heavy equipment uphill. Halfway there, Collins grabbed me. "Reed, carry that radio. Let's see if you can handle something that actually matters." He shoved it into my arms. The thing weighed a ton. My shoulders burned. My knees buckled. Everyone waited for me to drop it. I didn't. Step by step, I carried it up that hill. Collins shouted in my ear, "Fall and you take us all down." But I didn't fall. I planted my boots in that mud, lifted the weight, and pushed forward. When I finally reached the top, I slammed the radio into place. Lightning lit up the ridge, and for the first time, the platoon was silent. Nobody laughed. Nobody jeered. They just stared. That silence was the climax. That silence told me everything had shifted. I wasn't the weak one anymore. I was the one who carried the load. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning started like any other. Wet socks, sore muscles, the smell of boot polish mixed with instant coffee in the air. We were told to prepare for a full-day combat simulation out in the training grounds. Everyone was buzzing with nervous energy. This was the exercise that decided whether we were ready for the final evaluation. Fail here, and you'd be recycled or cut. No one wanted that, especially me. I already carried the weight of being the platoon's punching bag. If I messed this up, Collins would have his proof that I didn't belong. The trucks dropped us at the edge of the forest. The air was damp, thick with pine and mud. Packs were strapped. Tight, rifles loaded with blanks, helmets cinched down. The sergeant in charge barked the mission, carry the radio unit through hostile territory, establish a relay point on the ridge, and hold it until relieved. Sounds simple, right? Except the enemy was the other half of the company, waiting to ambush us every step of the way. Collins immediately took charge of our squad, barking orders like he was Patton reincarnated. "Reed, you're on rear security. Stay out of the way." His tone dripped with disdain. The others smirked, happy to see me pushed to the back again. Only Johnson gave me a look. Quiet, steady, like he knew it wasn't right. But he didn't speak. Not yet. We moved fast through the brush, mud sucking at our boots, sweat mixed with rain until my uniform stuck to me like glue. Collins kept up a running commentary. "Stay tight, move fast, and Reed, try not to screw this up." I bit my tongue, just kept my eyes scanning the trees. That's when the ambush hit. Blank rounds cracked through the forest. Smoke grenades filled the air. Recruits hit the ground, returning fire. Someone screamed, "Man down!" even though it was all pretend. In that chaos, our squad scattered. And that's when it happened. The radio unit, our lifeline, shorted out. Sparks popped. The thing went dead in Collins's hands. He cursed, slammed it against his knee, shook it like it was a toy. "It's fried! We're screwed!" His voice rose to a pitch I'd never heard before. Panic. The whole squad froze. No comms meant no backup. No relay meant automatic mission failure. Collins looked around wild-eyed. And then, of course, he turned on me. "This is on you, Reed. You touched it earlier, didn't you? Damn it, you broke it." My chest clenched with rage. I hadn't touched that radio once. But in Collins' eyes, everything wrong was always my fault. For a second, I thought about staying quiet, letting them all believe it, but then I stepped forward. "It's not broken. It's just wet." Collins snapped his head at me like I'd just spoken out of turn in a courtroom. "What did you say, farm boy?" My voice shook, but I pushed it out anyway. "The wiring's soaked. We can fix it." He laughed. Actually laughed in the middle of the firefight. "And you're an electrician now? Sit down before you embarrass us even more." He shoved the radio against my chest. "Here, show us your magic trick." Everyone stared, waiting for me to fail. My hands shook, but not from fear. From something deeper. Anger. Humiliation, and, maybe for once, belief. I opened the panel, used the tip of my knife to scrape mud off the contacts, ripped a strip from my undershirt to dry the circuit. The firing around us kept echoing, recruits yelling, smoke burning my eyes. But I tuned it out, focused on the work. Finally, I twisted the wire back into place, closed the lid and hit the switch. Static roared. Then signal. The squad stared like I'd just pulled a rabbit out of a helmet. Johnson grinned, shaking his head. "Well, I'll be damned." Collins's face went pale. "Lucky guess," he muttered, but his voice cracked. For the first time, he didn't sound in control. We moved again, faster now, but the exercise wasn't done punishing us. Halfway up the ridge, a fake mortar round went off nearby. Smoke and chaos. Johnson slipped, his pack trapping him under a fallen log. The squad froze, debating whether to leave him. Mission first, man second. Collins barked, "We don't have time. Leave him." Something in me snapped. I dropped my rifle, lunged toward Johnson, and started hauling at the log. It weighed a ton. My back screamed, arms trembling, but I dug in. Johnson coughed, eyes wide. "Reed, you'll get yourself killed. Just go." I growled through clenched teeth. "Not leaving you." Behind me, Collins yelled, "You're wasting time. We'll fail the mission." His voice was high, frantic, like a man watching his power slip away. I shoved harder, adrenaline flooding every nerve. With one last heave, the log rolled, freeing Johnson. I dragged him to his feet, threw his arm over my shoulder, and we kept moving. The squad followed, silent now. No laughter, no jeers. Just the sound of boots pounding mud as we climbed. When we finally reached the ridge, I set the radio down, keyed the mic, and got the signal through. Relay established. Mission complete. And the moment the voice came back over the net, confirming success, I looked up and saw it. Silence. Every face in that squad, from the cocky recruits to the ones who used to laugh the loudest, just staring. Even Collins. Especially Collins. He opened his mouth like he had something to say, but nothing came out. His power, his authority, the smirk he wore like a crown, it all cracked in that moment. He'd frozen under pressure. I hadn't. He'd ordered us to abandon a man. I'd carried him, and everyone saw it. The silence was the climax. It was heavier than the rain, heavier than the mud. For the first time, nobody laughed at me. Nobody doubted. They were just quiet, staring at me like they'd never really seen me before. Johnson clapped me on the back, his voice low. "You saved us, Reed." Those words hit harder than any insult ever had. For the first time, I felt something different in my chest. Not shame, not anger, but pride. A small flame, but real. We marched back down the ridge, radio on my back, Johnson beside me. Collins trailed behind, eyes down. His authority was gone. Everyone knew it. I didn't gloat, didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The silence had said it all. That night back in the barracks, the air was different. No laughter at my expense. No whispers. Just quiet glances. Some respectful, some ashamed. Collins sat on his bunk, staring at the floor. Johnson walked past mine, dropped a protein bar again, but this time he smiled. Guess you're not dead weight after all. I didn't answer. Just tucked my father's dog tags into my shirt, felt their weight, and thought, maybe I finally belonged. What I never expected was how fast that moment on the ridge would change everything, not just for me, but for the whole platoon. And in ways none of us could see yet, it was only the beginning. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The day after the ridge exercise, the air in the barracks felt different. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, it was cautious. Recruits who once laughed at me now avoided eye contact. A few nodded quietly as I passed, like they weren't sure if I'd nod back. Collins, though, he stayed silent. No jokes, no smirks, just a heavy scowl that followed me everywhere. That silence from him was louder than all his insults put together. At chow, I carried my tray the same way I always did, expecting to sit in the far corner alone. But this time when I passed Johnson's table, he shoved his pack aside. Sit, he said. Just one word, but the whole room noticed. The laughter that usually followed me to the back corner didn't come. Instead, I sat down, my hands tight around my fork, waiting for someone to crack a joke. Nobody did. All I heard was the sound of trays, the scrape of boots, and the quiet shift of eyes. That silence felt heavier than humiliation ever did. Later during formation, the commander called us together. He was an older officer, gray at the edges, eyes sharp as bayonets. He held the after-action report in his hands. Yesterday's exercise, he began, showed me two things. He paused, letting the weight sink in. First, some of you don't understand leadership under fire, and second, some of you do. His eyes scanned the platoon, then landed on Collins. Sergeant Collins, you froze. You ordered your men to abandon one of their own. That is not leadership. The words cracked through the air like live rounds. Collins shifted on his boots, jaw tight, but said nothing. Then the commander's eyes turned to me. My chest tightened. Private Reed, you carried the radio. You carried a man, and you carried this squad to the finish line. That's leadership. The whole formation shifted. Heads turned, eyes widened. I felt heat rush to my face, but I stood still, jaw set. The commander let the silence hang. Then he added, Reed will represent this platoon in the final exercise. That was the moment. The explosion. Collins's authority shattered in front of everyone. The man who spent weeks making me the butt of every joke had just been exposed. And I, the so-called farm boy, was the one chosen to stand for all of us. The shock in the ranks was palpable. Some recruits looked guilty, some ashamed, some almost proud. Collins's face went red, his fists clenched, but he couldn't say a word. Chain of command had spoken. That night the barracks buzzed. Guys who never looked at me before came by, clapped me on the shoulder, muttered, "Good job out there." I kept my answers short, quiet. I wasn't looking for applause, but part of me soaked it in. After so many nights of being invisible or mocked, recognition felt strange, heavy, like wearing a uniform 2 sizes too big. Collins didn't join the chatter. He sat on his bunk staring at the floor, jaw tight enough to crack teeth. When lights went out, I heard him whisper to the guy next to him, "This isn't over," but his voice didn't sound powerful anymore. It sounded small, hollow. Johnson stopped by my bunk before turning in. He dropped another protein bar, smirked. "Guess you don't need these anymore." I shook my head. "Guess not." But I tucked it under my pillow anyway. Not as food, as a reminder. A small act of quiet loyalty when no one else would step in. That meant more than all the pats on the back tonight. The next morning, Collins tried to reclaim ground. During PT, he barked at me louder than ever. "Reed, faster! Don't think yesterday makes you special." His voice cracked. The platoon didn't laugh. Not a single chuckle. That broke. Him more than my silence ever could. Later during rifle drill, Collins accidentally knocked my weapon out of my hands. It clattered to the ground. Everyone froze. I bent, picked it up, and handed it back without a word. The silence that followed cut sharper than any insult. For the first time, he wasn't the one setting the tone. His attempts at humiliation no longer landed. They just exposed him. By evening, word spread that the commander had assigned me squad lead for a prep exercise. My stomach dropped when I heard it. Squad lead? Me? The kid who couldn't even find a seat in the chow hall 2 weeks ago? Some of the guys grumbled, sure, but most just nodded, and Johnson gave me that same look he always did. Steady, calm, like he'd known all along. We stepped onto the field. The weight of the role pressed heavy on me, but when I called out commands, they listened. Not because of rank, not because of fear, but because they'd seen me carry weight when no one else would. The climax of this part wasn't loud. No shouting, no dramatic explosion. Just the quiet reversal of power playing out in every look, every silence, every nod. Collins's downfall wasn't in a single moment. It was in every second that no one laughed at his jokes anymore. Every step they took following my lead instead of his. That was the real reversal. When lights went out that night, I lay in my bunk, dog tags pressed to my chest, thinking about my father. He knew what it was like to earn respect the hard way, to bleed for it, to suffer in silence until the day the truth came out. Maybe that's why I carried his tags close, because in some strange way, he'd been walking with me this whole time. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized something. I wasn't the platoon's burden anymore. I wasn't their joke. I was their example. And nothing Collins said, or didn't say, could change that. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The final morning came with a gray sky hanging over the base. The air was still, heavy, like even the weather knew something was about to end. Reveille blasted, boots hit the floor, and for once, nobody made jokes when I stumbled out of my bunk. The silence was respect, though no one dared call it that out loud. We all filed outside, the flag waiting at the pole, the wind tugging at its edges. I stood at attention with the platoon, sweat already, prickling under my collar. My heart beat harder than it had in any firefight drill, because this wasn't about endurance anymore. It was about what came after. The commander's voice broke the quiet. Today we recognize the growth of this unit. Some of you learned leadership, some of you learned humility, and some of you proved that strength doesn't always shout, it carries. His words cut through every chest like a blade. He didn't look at me when he said it, but everyone else did. Chow that morning was different too. The same tables where I once sat alone now had space cleared for me. Johnson nudged me toward the middle of the room. Sit here. Just 2 words, but they felt like an order. I sat down and nobody laughed. No whispers, just quiet acceptance. Forks scraped plates, boots shifted under the tables, and for once, I didn't eat in shame. Later, back in the barracks, Collins approached. His steps were slow, heavy, like each one cost him something. He stopped at my bunk, eyes down, jaw tight. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then finally, his voice broke the silence. I was wrong. Just 3 words. No excuses. No anger. His face looked older somehow. Lines deeper, like admitting it had aged him. I'd follow you anywhere, he added, so low only I heard it. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, just nodded once. Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about what respect costs, and what it's worth when it's finally earned. That evening we gathered at the flagpole again. The sun dipped low, throwing long shadows across the field. Johnson stood next to me, silent, steady. He glanced at me once, then snapped a crisp salute. No words. Just that. My throat tightened. I raised my hand and returned it, the weight of my father's dog tags pressing against my chest. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't carrying them for him anymore. I was carrying them for myself. The commander dismissed us, and the platoon broke off in small groups. Laughter came back, but it wasn't cruel now. It was lighter, easier. In the middle of it, I stood alone for a moment, staring at the flag climbing higher in the evening breeze. Everything I'd endured, every insult, every night alone, every drop of rain and mud, it all led here, to this moment of quiet pride. I realized then that strength wasn't about being loud. It wasn't about winning every fight or silencing every insult. It was about carrying the weight when no one believed you could. And in the end, that weight turned into respect, real respect, the kind no one could take away. As we walked back to the barracks, Johnson clapped my shoulder. Collins trailed a few steps behind, silent, humbled. And me, I just kept moving forward, one steady step at a time, with the flag at my back and the future in front of me. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The image still lingers in my mind. The platoon standing at ease beneath the American flag as the wind pulled it tight across the sky. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Collins, the same sergeant who once mocked me, gave a single sharp nod. No words, just respect. Johnson stood beside me, his hand brushing the dog tags at my chest, and for the first time, I felt like I was no longer walking in my father's shadow. I was carrying my own weight, my own honor. The flag rippled overhead, and in that silence, everything changed. What I learned out there wasn't about winning or proving someone wrong. It was about holding steady when the world wanted to push me down, about carrying the load even when your back feels ready to break. Prejudice, humiliation, loneliness. They were my constant companions, but every insult was fuel, every doubt was a spark, and in the end, actions spoke louder than words. That's the truth of soldiering. That's the truth of life. You see, brotherhood isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet nod in the chow hall, the energy bar left on your bunk, the comrade who helps you carry the load when nobody else will. And honor isn't about how you start, it's about how you finish, about standing tall when no one expects you to. Like the old saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in this life, strength isn't just muscle, it's resilience, it's dignity, it's refusing to quit when quitting would be the easy way out. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button to show your support and subscribe if you want to walk with me through more stories of resilience, brotherhood, and honor. Until then, stand tall, stay strong, and never forget, we carry each other.